think we're rolling now. So welcome to another edition of Proyecto Podcast, the official podcast of the Latin Builders Association and a companion to Proyecto Magazine. I'm Gus Cabrera, the president of the LBA. And really the aim of this podcast is just to celebrate and highlight our member companies. And with us today is a good friend, an old friend who I talked into becoming a member last year, Emilio Miyares of Miyares Group. Emilio is, and his firm is a boutique accounting firm, right? And you specialize in really kind of serving as a, how can I call it, an outsourced CFO, right, for companies, for contractors, for your companies. Is that kind of pretty much
it? We pretty much have a boutique firm. We try to customize our services to the client's needs. And a lot of those, being small, medium-sized companies, we help them with their CFO type work and being their back office to a lot of their reporting needs and financing.
Yeah, and you've been a member now for about a year?
Yeah, right? It's been, I think it's coming up on the year now.
Coming up on a year, so we're sure to send you the invoice for the renewal.
I'm sure you will.
But I really kind of wanted to just get your experience as a somewhat recent member now. I know you've come to a lot of our events. What's been your experience so far? What do you think works? What doesn't? What's fun? What can be improved on? And what are your ideas?
I think overall it's been a warm experience, a warm welcome from everybody in the LBA. It's a family atmosphere, I believe. I think a
family that likes to drink, I think, right?
Yeah, and I like to do that as well. So, but I think one of the things is being present. If you're going to be networking, going to the different events, is being there and actually, hanging out and doing. Don't just go to the luncheons and leave. It's actually being there and growing the relationship with other members. That's how I think the big thing is just being, building the relationships.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things for you is that a lot of the folks that are part of the association are folks that you know, friends that you have. So I know that you reconnected with a bunch of old friends from your Hialeah days.
Yeah, actually, a group of them I ran into when we were at the fishing tournament this summer, and I didn't even know they were going to be there. And we connected there, and it's the relationship obviously has continued from there. But yeah, a lot of people indirectly just being involved in the Gables here, where a lot of people are around here, but the different people in the industry that we know, I know them directly or indirectly through clients. So it's been pretty cool having them, having that connection with the LBA.
And your offices, we're filming this in our LBA offices on Ponce and the Gables, but your offices are basically about 100 yards away.
Yeah, it's literally behind this building.
Behind this building. So I know that you looked at one point coming into this building because your firm is growing. But I want to talk a little bit about what you do and your clients and things like that, and kind of just more than anything to the folks that know you as one of the guys that goes to events but may not know exactly what you do, and really kind of touch a little bit on that outsourced CFO, because one of the conversations that we've had for a long time has been what happens when a small contractor or small vendor wants to take the next step. They're getting a lot of work. They want to participate with bigger projects, whether it be public projects or private projects, and now they need bonding, right? So beyond just talking to a surety company that can give them the bond, those companies are going to ask for certain documentation. So if you can kind of walk me through that process, pretend I'm a contractor trying to get bonding. Yeah,
I think part of the whole CFO, controllership package or idea that we have is a lot of smaller contractors or middle size, they don't know what they need. So we help them making sure their financial statements is an accurate picture of what's going on. A lot of times, they're behind on the billings, on the receivables, or entering them into the system. So it's not going to be accurate whenever they need those reporting. So that's where we come in and sometimes help them on the back end, helping them bill and make sure that gets out. Sometimes it's even training their in-house accountants, or if they need to hire someone, we help them in the hiring process. That way they have someone that's capable of handling some of these things and make sure that they're entering it correctly. For financial statement purposes, for contractors, for bonding, they need to job cost. Mm-hmm. So we need to know the accurate picture of each job and each contract, how, when the time is the time of the contract.
And there used to be a time, and probably I'm dating myself, probably way back, where some bonding companies were okay with just reviewed financials or a statement summary of their company. But now, I think for the most part, or across the board, everybody's surety companies are asking for, audited financials, correct?
Well, it depends on the size of the contractor itself and the size of the bond. And it really depends on the jobs itself. A lot of government, if you're getting government contracts, you're gonna need to do an audit for those, like the FDOT or things like that. You're gonna need an audit. Depending on the size, most of them are requiring for smaller contractors reviewed financials at the end of the year, and usually compilations during the year. It just depends on the size of the contracts and the history, the credit of the contractor, and how historically how have they performed their jobs.
Yeah, and one of the things that on that note, I know that sometimes a smaller contractor or a vendor, a subcontractor, I call them, whether it be a painting contractor or a plumbing contractor, they're doing, their sweet spot is maybe $100,000 project, right? A project that's about that much. But they want to do much bigger jobs. And sometimes that step up is a little bit too drastic, and that's when they get in trouble. How do you manage, or to what extent do you advise them to listen, let's kind of take it a little slower. If you're going to make that jump, you need to be set up a different way, because again, people get comfortable in a certain level, and then when they want to take the next step, sometimes they don't really understand what it takes to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things we look at, because sometimes, as you're saying, some of the guys are smaller and they want to take that next step, and usually I tell them it's an investment they have to do for the future. So it's not something you're going to go from a $100,000 contract and now you're going to be building a $5 million road or a bridge. You actually have to, do you have any history building those kind of contracts? As the sureties are not going to all of a sudden give you a bond for that. And then also, is a company strong enough to back up that kind of contract? So it's something you look at, for the years. A lot of smaller contractors, they strip the company of all the profits, and they leave very little in the business. So you're stripping the equity. Right. The sureties want to make sure you have some skin in the game, you have equity there, you have some working capital. So it's building the financials to what you want, and understanding the client's needs. Yeah. Because I can't drive them if I need to understand what they're trying to get at, and then help them and advise them how to get there. And sometimes it does take a couple of years to be able to get those type of contracts and be financially strong enough.
Build that financial strength, or at least on paper, that they can. I know that you didn't graduate college and open up your own accounting firm. Give us a little bit of your background. I'm sure you kind of work for, you had to go pay your dues in an accounting firm, I bet. So.
Well, when I graduated from Hialeah High. From there, got my AA in Miami-Dade, went to FIU, got my bachelor's in accounting. I have a master's in taxation and a CPA here in Florida. But when I came out of high school, my uncle has a local firm here in the Gables, and I actually went working with them, and I was there for 20 years. Oh, wow. So I paid my dues.
So you're like 120, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You could tell by the white hairs. Yeah. But basically, I went from being an intern there all the way up. I was a partner there. Okay. And about 5 years ago, I decided to go on my own. And I did a lot of construction, a lot of diverse different clients, but I was doing a lot of construction. But now I'm pretty much focusing on heavy concentration in construction, and for the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing.
Super. So I know that we talked a little bit about the smaller contractors and the vendors, but you also work with real estate developers, because I know you have some of those clients, and that's a funky accounting world, because a lot of those guys, basically, it's almost, they set up these companies per project, and managing that as part of a bigger umbrella. Talk to me a little bit about how is that different from your traditional representation of a particular contract or a particular vendor?
It's a little different, just really to keep the records clean, because a lot of times they have this holding company and it has several projects underneath it, and sometimes they're getting one project off the ground, and then they got to take money from this, like they're taking money from the same pocket, but you have to keep it separate and make sure that you're accounting for it correctly. That way everybody's separate, because sometimes they have different ownerships within the different developments and the different projects.
Correct, and you have different equity partners, and those guys.
It's just keeping it clean, keeping the records clean, and that's where we come in sometimes, and just helping them be that back office, because sometimes they don't have enough support and resources in their own office, in their own companies, to be able to run that. So that's where we come in, and we could help them at least keep the records clean, keep their accounting up to date, and as best as possible. So whenever they need financing at the bank, it's easier to pull up a financial statement, even if it's an in-house, versus now they got to take 2 months to go back and reconstruct everything for the last, since they started the project, because they weren't keeping the records clean.
And I won't ask you for. I was tempted to ask you for like a horror story or something funny, but I'm sure you want to keep your license, so I don't want to give you any specifics, right? But I'm sure that some some folks that are there's some folks that are not as prepared as others, or as organized as others, and unraveling that after the fact. Because do you do any forensic accounting as well? Do you have to come in after the fact, after a project is almost completed, or a company has kind of gone through a process and try to rebuild, us Cubans call it rebuild el muñeco. So you have to kind of re-put it together to understand what happened?
Yeah, sometimes either you have some companies that the project they didn't keep it up to date, or so we come in and we could figure that out. We've done forensics for some partners. There's a partner dispute and they are breaking apart, and one partner or equity owner wants to make sure that everything was accounted for correctly. So we come in and almost, make sure everything was accounted for. And if not, sometimes we have to do just a separate set of books just to calculate everything, make sure everything's correct, because one partner might not be counting, everything where it should go and accounting for it. So we come in and we do some forensics there. We've been called in for different projects to do forensics. Uh-huh. Those are usually fun. There's a lot of stories there, but we'll have to say those over some drinks.
Exactly. We'll when the camera's not rolling, you can tell me a few. But even speaking in that, because that's actually an interesting segue, right? So if there's a partnership, like I mentioned in real estate, sometimes there's different. Each project is a different makeup. Mm-hmm. There's typically one person or a couple people that are consistent participation, which is usually your client. But even in a business that has a partnership and that business is transitioning either to two individual owners or one owner's buying out the other, that has to be always a little interesting, right? Because I think there's, when things are going well, everybody's on the same page. When things turn south, so how important is it, I guess, for those companies to have someone like you in place that can kind of keep the score within the company to be able to, be soluble if there's a need for that?
Yeah, I think it's important because at the end of the day, we're going to be neutral. Mm-hmm. And when you have the two parties, like I'm neutral, I'm not pulling one way or the other. I have really no interest in the partnership. So I'm staying neutral, and you're coming in and on a monthly or however often you're looking at the financials, right. And I could come and sit with them and say, hey, this is what we have. And then they're seeing it that it's coming from a neutral party, not from one of the partners, which happens a lot. Sometimes the partner's like, I'll run the books, I'll do the accounting. And then that's where the mistrust comes in. Yeah. And it starts it goes from there. But if you have someone, a CPA firm coming in and reviewing these things on a monthly basis, let's say, then it's going to be clear and it's going to be neutral. There's really no interest pulling one way or the other.
Right. And I know some of your clients, and one of the things they all say consistently is that what they like about you is that they're dealing with you. They're dealing with you, with Terry, your wife, who works with you. So it's very customer customer friendly in that sense. A typical client, a typical contractor or vendor that is, has decent sales, decent cash flow, how often in the course of a year do you meet with them? Obviously, during tax season, those conversations are probably taking place more often. But on a regular timeline, and over the summer or the fall area timeline, how often do you sit with a client and kind of go over their structure, their documents, their financial data?
I would say probably the average client, it's minimum quarterly. Mm-hmm. To be able to review that, because then that's when your quarterly tax payments are due. So we like coming in, making sure everything's okay, reconciled, meeting with the client and seeing what they're projecting, and on a quarterly basis, that's usually the average client. We have some clients we meet with when we do more of the CFO work. There's clients we meet with on a weekly basis, okay, because we're more hands-on. So it just depends. There's other guys that are, they have a large accounting department in-house already. So sometimes we come in and it's just mid-year and year-end. But
more of a support structure.
Right, but that's usually, I would say our average client is quarterly. Right. And usually I like talking, they have my cell phone and they have, they could get a hold of me, and I like dealing with the decision maker in the company. Mm-hmm. So most of my clients are, small, mid-size. I have a couple large guys, but usually they've grown over the years, but they're still the guys that are, the main decision makers are still the same guys, the same group of people, family. So then I like talking to them because it's a lot easier when you're advising someone, you're talking to the main person,
of course,
not to, a board of directors that it kind of, it loses. And that's where my sweet spot is, I think, small and medium-sized clients that I could advise, and I could help them to their goals and their financial, dreams sometimes.
Now we're taping this, and it's early mid-February, I guess, which is a busy season, and I dragged you over from your office to do this. I always ask this of my friends that are in accounting, but how busy does tax season get on a daily basis? What is the typical day for an accountant during tax season?
I think when it's really busy and it gets really hairy, it's kind of crazy. It's organized chaos, I think, in the office because.
By the way, I welcome Harry these days. So.
It's just organized chaos because you got clients calling that they want their stuff done because either it's not only just for tax season, but they're trying to refinance. Everybody wants their taxes. They're trying to refinance their warehouse, their buildings, their homes. So it's not just taxes. And I think it's you're trying to get their what are their expectations, and we try to manage that. Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes you don't really need to get everything out by April 15th.
Right.
So we kind of manage that expectation. But a lot of times it's just organized chaos because you're just trying to keep your clients happy, the staff keeping them from jumping out the window in the office. But it's almost like I'm directing a circus sometimes.
Yeah. No, I bet, and I'm sure. It gets more difficult if the documentation that comes back isn't maybe as pristine as it should be or it could be. You're having to kind of go back to our conversation, recreate that muñeco, if you will. So, what do you do for fun aside from being in accounting, which I know is tons of fun? What do you do for fun outside with your wife? I know that you have a beautiful family. What else do you do?
Well, besides hanging out with my family, we like boating and fishing.
Okay. What's the last time you went fishing?
It's been a while. I've been busy in the office. I think it was probably end of last year, but I like go to the Keys a lot and hang out there. I got some good friends of mine that live down there.
Right.
Every now and then I throw in a triathlon just to
oh, really?
Stay on the slimmer side because of all the drinks I think build up, and I gotta trim them off.
Drinks and croquetas, right?
Yeah.
My original idea for this podcast was croquetas and conversation, but it got shut down. So I figured we go with Proyecto as a safe bet.
Yeah, that's probably a little
but
safer.
Next time we'll do this, we'll have a bunch of croquetas here.
Yeah.
I'll eat most of them, and you can just talk while you're talking. I'm eating croquetas.
I'll bring the bourbon.
There you go. That's a good deal. So tell us. I think we've been talking for about 20 minutes. We have some events coming up. I know that you participate. One of the ones that. And I kind of wanted to talk to you, and by extension to our members, we're really in the full planning effect of the LBA Builders Expo, this year's Expo, an event that we do every 2 years. What I like a lot about the Expo, and what I think worked really well 2 years ago, is that it's an opportunity for all the members to come together and showcase what they do, showcase their products and services, and at the same time, connect with other members. But we also, this year, one of the things that we're trying to do a little more than we did last time is more information about the industry and about construction and development. And our theme is really the future of Miami. How will Miami look in 2050? And I know that you're looking to participate in that, but I kind of want to get your idea. Our idea says, how do you see, I know that you're an accountant, but you also do a little bit of real estate. How do you see Miami in 20, 30 years? Certainly things have gotten more expensive, right? But there's two sides to that, right? Yes, it's expensive, but if you're a property owner, you're pretty happy that your properties have gotten value. How do you see Miami in the year 2050? How do you see it beyond that?
I think Miami, I've lived here my whole life, and it's grown, the expansion, everybody moving into South Florida. One of the fastest growing areas down here is just there's not enough room for buildings.
Yeah.
So I think that is going to be interesting how things are going to get redeveloped, because you're seeing just regular residential lots going up, and then all of a sudden there's they buy a few of them and there's a building that changes zoning and things like that. But I really see like the workforce housing being I think one of the big needs, just to everybody's coming in and they're building these big homes and all that, but where are you going to get a lot of the
where are you going to go?
workforce.
Where are you going to go? And,
So
right.
it's going to be interesting because just traffic alone,
Yeah.
and I live about a mile and a half from my office, and just that has taken, over the years, I've doubled my commute just timing because just more cars and more people out on the street.
One question I wanted to ask from that property transaction perspective, because sometimes, right, you get excited when you own a property and that property appreciates. But if you start thinking about taxes, then you get not so excited about the taxes that come with it. Kind of to close it out before before we end this podcast, how do you help a property owner? Should a property owner come talk to their accountant before they're thinking of transacting a property or selling a property, so they can position themselves in the best possible way to have the less tax burden applied?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk to a tax professional, sometimes to the attorneys, and usually what we do is we quarterback a lot of these conversations with several professionals, depending on what the needs are. But we like talking to the client and seeing what they want to do, what's their future needs. Because sometimes if they're just going to sell and cash out and I'm good with that and I'm going to retire, there's some things you could get into. But if you want to potentially keep investing, there's different 1031s and different things you could do. But it depends on what their needs are, and then we can position them. But being ahead of the game, that way we could help them. Because a lot of times they come in and they're like, hey, I sold this property, how do I save taxes? It's already
too late.
Yes, it's on the back end of it. So we like being on the front side of that. That way we could help them and try to maximize either taxes, but also the conversation and the what their options are.
Yeah. So this wasn't so bad, right? It was pretty good, right?
Pretty good, not too bad.
Right. Tell them exactly where your office is, how to get a hold of you, if there's a contractor or a vendor or an LBA member that may look at this podcast and say, wow, that's the guy that I need helping me. If you kind of just want to give them your elevator pitch and your information.
Sure. My name is Emilio Miyares again. Office is Miyares Group LLC. We're right literally behind the building here is at 130 Madeira Avenue. Our phone number is 305-640-8521. And our website is miyaresgroup.com.
This was fun, man. Thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you for having me.